One of the administration's top foreign policy priorities, Middle East peace. But after 2 years of haggling, haranguing and hoping, the Obama administration has little to show for its effort. This week, direct peace talks between Israeli and Palestinian negotiators collapsed, and the United States has given up trying to get Israel to freeze settlements as a condition for talks. A disappointing turn of events for President Obama, who, from the first days of his administration, was determined to get both sides directly talking to each other.
America must play its role in ushering in a new era of peace. To the Muslim world, we seek a new way forward.
He came in as a potentially transformative president, louder, harder, and faster on this issue than any of his predecessors.
And on his second day in office, President Obama appointed a special envoy to the region, George Mitchell.
He, in effect, had no strategy. It was an effort to repair American credibility with one audience, the Arabs and the Muslims, but it seemed to pay very little attention to the political realities in Israel.
Talks between the Israelis and the Palestinians had stalled for 2 years, and to move them along, President Obama insisted that Israel stop building Jewish settlements where the Palestinians plan to build their state.
He wants to see a stop to settlements, not some settlements, not outposts, not natural growth exceptions.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu eventually agreed to a 10-month freeze on new construction. And at the end of August, the White House announced the resumption of long-stalled face-to-face negotiations between the Israelis and the Palestinians.
This moment of opportunity may not soon come again. They cannot afford to let it slip away.
But it did. At the end of September, the settlement freeze ended, and the U.S. could not persuade Israel to extend it. Direct talks broke down, and now the process is back to where it started.
It is no secret that the parties have a long way to go and that they have not yet made the difficult decisions that peace requires.
We're going to explore now what those difficult decisions are. It's a rare opportunity, exceedingly rare, to have top Palestinian and Israeli officials together here for an interview. So joining me now, Palestinian Prime Minister Salam Fayyad and Israeli opposition leader, former Foreign Minister Tzipi Livni. They are in Washington to address the 2010 Saban Forum hosted by the Brookings Institution. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for being here. Okay, let me ask you first, Ms. Livni, as a representative of Israel, how can Israel do this, basically humiliate the United States, its biggest backer, its biggest donor of all sorts of aid, and just say no to a request for another 90-day freeze in order to get this peace process moving?
I believe that it was the wrong answer. I believe that the relations between Israel and the United States are existential to the future of the State of Israel, but more than that, I believe that peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians is an Israeli interest. It's not a favor to President Obama. And Israel needs to make these kind of decisions in order to live in peace. So basically, peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians is an American interest, but it is also an Israeli interest.
So if you don't agree with basically rejecting the United States request for this freeze, let me ask you, Prime Minister, how can your side now, after all that the United States has put in, after all the goodwill the United States has given, particularly to you and your efforts in your institution building, how can you now say, no, sorry, no freeze, no temporary freeze, we're not going to have direct talks?
It's a question of credibility. Credibility of the political process, a chief deliverable of which is supposed to be an end to the Israeli occupation that began in 1967. So when you experience the kind of difficulties that this particular process has experienced in the form of failure to get Israel to comply with something as basic as to stop committing further violation of international law in the form of continued settlement expansion. Question, how can one rely on this process to deliver on the end of occupation? It's a question of political credibility.
Okay, but the point is actually, I know that there was a great deal of discomfort within the Palestinian leadership when the administration insisted on this settlement freeze for talks. It sort of put President Abbas in a bit of a strange position. Could he not decide to go ahead since there are all these things on offer on the core issues now?
We definitely would like to know what is on offer on core issues. I mean, that really is what this process should be about. And what we really would like to know as early as possible is what it is that Mr. Netanyahu has in mind when he says Palestinian state.
Well, let me ask you then.
Yes.
You heard the speech on Friday night here in Washington. Secretary Clinton laid out the core issues. And of the big ones, on Jerusalem, she talked about how each side has to really be able to negotiate on what their aspirations are for Jerusalem, and also to keep it a place for all the world's faiths and populations. Your own Defense Minister, Ehud Barak, went even further, talking about splitting Jerusalem. Is that something that...
And then the Prime Minister said today that what Ehud Barak said a few days ago is not a government policy. But I think that the good news is that what Secretary Clinton said, that they are going to discuss with Israel and the Palestinians their basic position on the core issues. And these are the difficult decisions that need to be taken in terms of Israel's security for the future, borders. Jerusalem is just one of the core issues that are on the table. So basically, the choice in the Middle East is sometimes between bad options. So in choosing between building more buildings or making peace, I prefer to make peace. But it is also a matter of trust, and the parties need to regain the trust.
On the issue of refugees, this has been a big issue, obviously, for the Palestinians. On the refugees, Mrs. Clinton said again that it's a difficult and emotional issue. It requires a just and permanent solution. Is it time for the Palestinians to recognize what basically everybody knows, and that is that not all the 48 refugees are going to come back, and that there must be a just compensation and a just solution to all of this? Can the Palestinians do this?
The formulation used by the Secretary in her address at the Saban Forum 2 days ago actually was appropriate. She talked about just and fair resolution. This is one of the permanent status issues to be actually discussed and agreed, along with borders, Jerusalem, settlements, and the rest of the issues. And so we're looking forward actually to a process that could begin immediately. We already have indicated to Americans where we stand on the basic issues. I think what really remains to be done now is, in order to give the process the kind of credibility that's required, is for us to really know with precision where it is that the government of Israel stands on the fundamental issue of what it is that's meant by an end to the Israeli occupation, what is it that's meant by a state of Palestine. We're most troubled by what we hear by way of pronouncements made, especially by the Prime Minister of Israel, when really the focus is on ending the occupation, him continuing to use such loose language like we do not wish to continue to have control over the lives of Palestinians. It's time for more precision and specificity.
Can I say something about refugees, if I may? Because the concept of two states for two peoples means that Israel is homeland for the Jewish people, and as Israel gave refuge to the Jews who needed to leave Europe and Arab states after before and after the creation of the state, so does the Palestinian state. So by definition, the creation of the Palestinian state is the answer to this sensitive problem of the Palestinians.
Well,
but this is the deal, basically.
In this regard, Secretary of State Clinton also said that the United States will be offering bridging proposals. That's one step before offering a plan. Do you look forward to the United States offering bridging proposals on these core issues?
I believe that the best thing for Israel is to negotiate, to make the decisions, and to make the deal itself.
Right, but since that hasn't happened
and
for the
I
last
negotiated
decades,
with the Palestinians for 9 months. I think it's possible, and this what need to be. This is the role of the Israeli leadership. So hopefully, the Israeli government would make the decisions.
and if they don't, would you be comfortable with U.S. bridging proposals?
It depends on the substance. You know, it's not need to see what are these bridging proposals, whether these represent the interest of Israel. And I believe also not everything is a zero-sum game. Right. Not everything which is pro-Israel is anti-Palestinian and vice versa.
Well,
so there
I mean, the
are
United
some
States
proposals. There are some proposals can represent the interest of Israel, and there are some that maybe are going to be problematic, but it needs to be judged in the future.
Well, the United States is committed, and she again reiterated, committed to the security of Israel and peace, and is saying that these issues do need to be dealt with, and since they're not being dealt with, would your side agree and see as a positive thing U.S. bridging proposals?
Taken all together, I think it was clear that the Secretary on the core issues had something to say, and we welcomed that. As a matter of fact, I looked at her statement as a studied statement, deliberate on each of the permanent status issues. She had a bit of definition going forward, and she did say that the United States would come up with bridging proposals as appropriate when necessary. It may be necessary, it may be unavoidable, actually, for the United States acting as a broker at some point to come in with bridging proposals to really make this happen.
Ms. Livni,
the good news is the determination of the United States not giving us the process and the future treaty. Bridging proposals need to be seen in the future.
that's the good news that the United States say it's going to stay committed. But you know, many people who are big friends of Israel are really lamenting the fact that the United States has been given a sort of a bloody nose by the Israeli government regarding this settlement and the idea of pursuing these face-to-face talks. So you are sitting here with Salam Fayyad, the Israeli government, the Europeans, the United States, many governments around the world are astounded and impressed by what Mr. Fayyad has done in terms of institution building, economic growth in the West Bank, and security development. Apparently it's one of the best times in terms of security by the Palestinians, certainly on the West Bank. Why is Israel not able to give more to partners such as Mr. Fayyad to boost his credibility, to boost his ability to bring the population along, and that of the Palestinian leadership?
Basically, I would like to share what you said about the important thing that the Prime Minister Fayyad is doing, what we call changing the realities on the ground. Israel is helping, is working with Salam Fayyad in order to do the best. And this is just one part for the future, because what he's doing is something that Israel cooperates and helps to do, but it's not enough. The idea is to have something complementary, and this is the peace treaty, the legal peace treaty between Israel and the Palestinians. So we are helping, we are working with. I think that you can say so as well.
No, not enough. Relative to the objective,
but not enough.
Not enough, not nearly enough. Relative to the objective of having to see the occupation come to an end in the course of 2011. I mean, that's what we're looking at. Consistent with that, one would think that.
Do you think that's even possible now?
I think it is eminently possible. I think the expectations should be set right, and they should be set high. Unless that begins to happen, then then we'll be allowed to continue to drift along. But what I have just said is that this is not nearly enough relative to the objective of having to see the occupation come to the end of the course of this coming year. I think it's eminently possible. There's no reason why we should not by now have begun to see evidence of the occupation beginning to be rolled back. We haven't yet seen such signs. It's very important for this, our effort, the one that you just referred to begin to be seen as state in the making. I think it's hugely important, not only for us Palestinians, but also for Israelis as well.
And do you know, a lot of Palestinians have said, well, leadership has said, well, we're just going to declare our own unilateral state. Are you committed to that? Do you think that's useful?
What we are committed to is statehood, not declaration of statehood. We're looking for a state. We did make a declaration of statehood going back to 1988. This time around, we're looking for real state on the ground.
And Ms. Livni, during the elections, you did win more votes.
Yes.
Is it time for you to try to go into make another government, a coalition government?
No, this is the current Israeli coalition is the Prime Minister's Netanyahu's choice. He decided to build this coalition with what he called his natural partners. My views about the peace process and the need to achieve peace are different from this coalition. I offered Netanyahu in the past, more than once, to have a different coalition that can not only speak about the idea of two states for two peoples, but also translate it into peace treaty with the Palestinians. He decided to have this coalition. Unfortunately, because part of my frustration today is that we are sitting together, and 2 years ago it was not, it was not news, it was not big deal. I mean, we met Israelis and Palestinians on a daily basis in the negotiations room, helping each other to solve problems on the ground. So I truly hope that there is a better understanding today in Israel by the public and also leaders and politicians that peace treaty is our own interest. It's not a favor to the United States and not even to the Palestinians.
On that note, I wish we had more time. Thank you both, Prime Minister Fayyad,
Thank you.
Tzipi Livni. Thank you so much for joining us.